Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to a check-in on my priority reads video that I filmed at the beginning of the year. I'm going to be watching and reacting to see whether I've read all of the books that I said I was going to read at the start of the year. So let's get into my thoughts and opinions, because I know that I have not liked some of the books on this video, but I actually haven't rewatched it for a couple of months. So some of the things I say will probably be a surprise to me. So let's get started. Hello, my name is Beck and one of my goals in 2019 is to read a bunch of the unread books that I already own, and so I've made this priority list. There are under 20 books here because I didn't want to make this too long and overwhelm myself, so let's just get started. The first book on this list was gifted to me by one of my lovely English teachers when I was 17, and I am now 25 and I still haven't read it yet. It is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I actually have read The Book Thief, so it's a great start already. Unfortunately, I didn't love it. I'm not a huge historical fiction person. I think I mentioned that in this video actually, and true to form, I didn't love it, and I read Bridge of Clay as well by him, and I didn't like that a lot either. So it might just be his whimsical writing style, or it's the story, or it's the setting, but I don't quite gel with it. I think I gave The Book Thief like 3 out of 5 stars or 3.5 stars out of 5. If you don't know what it's about this little girl named Liesel, and she is German, and her parents take in this boy who is Jewish and they hide him in their basement. And so it's really about the perils of war and all that kind of thing. And Liesel also likes to steal books from the piles of books that the Nazis are burning. So it's not really my wheelhouse, and that's why I only ended up giving it about 3.5 stars. But if you watch one of my wrap-ups, you can probably get more detail on my thoughts about it. So I'll link the wrap-ups and stuff below that I talk about the books in this video for. All I know about this is that it's a historical fiction set in World War II and it's narrated by death. I've also got The Night Circus on my TBR because, like The Book Thief, it's just been sitting on my shelf for ages. The Night Circus. I read this one and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars as well. I didn't love it. I think again it was because it was very slow, and I'm kind of in a reading slump this year, and really was also fairly historical. It was about a traveling circus, but I just remember not being into the vibe of it. I felt like it was a romance heavy plot and then not a lot of drive behind the narrative to make these two characters duel against each other, and there wasn't really much of a description about magic and why it was there. It was a very soft magic, and while I like books with magic in them, I like a little bit of description as well. So it didn't really have that drive for me, which is why I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It didn't really have a plot. It was fairly character driven. So if you like character driven books, then you'll probably like The Night Circus. This next book is YA fantasy, and it's got a similar premise to Throne of Glass, but it is Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. I read Poison Study and I think I read it for a readathon, so that is the third book on this TBR video that I finished. I think again I gave it like 4 stars, maybe 3.5. It was a fairly stereotypical young adult fantasy, like you could see the way that the plot was going to unfold, but I kind of knew that going in because it kind of kickstarted the genre. It was one of those original fantasies that kind of spawned fairly early and kickstarted the genre that we now know and love, or the category that we now know and love. So I anticipated that this would be a little bit predictable, but I did like the characterization in it. So I did enjoy Poison Study. It's probably the one that I enjoyed the most so far in this video. I also have Zeros and Sequel Swarm on my TBR pile. I've actually unhauled both of these. I just wasn't in the mood for them. I kept putting them off, so I ended up getting rid of them. I know one of the books is signed, but I just couldn't really be bothered to start it, and I know that if I'm not interested in actually picking up the book itself, then I probably won't enjoy the content. So I unhauled it, and I hope someone else is going to love it because it just really wasn't my thing. I think I ended up growing out of it because I bought it a couple of years ago. I've also got The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith and its sequels on my TBR pile, even though I don't usually gravitate towards crime or mystery. The Cuckoo's Calling is a book that I haven't started at all, and I've kind of let that slip between the cracks a little bit. So that's the first one that I haven't actually read at all, and it's one that I still own. So I don't know how I'm going to get to that because it's getting towards the end of the year. I might push for it and see how I go, but I really like mood reading at the moment because I've been so slumpy. So if I pick something up and I force myself to read it, I'm probably just going to dig my heels in and not enjoy it. I could maybe try the audiobook, but I haven't tested it to see if I like the narrator, so we'll see on that one. I doubt that I'll end up reading it this year. I didn't actually pick this series up myself, but an old co-worker actually gifted them to me. I really like the way that I acquired these books, so I probably will read them because of the way that I received them, but if it was just up to me and I was out at a bookstore, I probably wouldn't necessarily have bought these for myself. This one is way overdue. It's Traitor to the Throne by Alwyn Hamilton. Traitor to the Throne is another one that I've just kind of let slide. I actually recently decided off camera to unhaul this series or to just DNF the series altogether. I did did like the first book. I gave it about 4 out of 5 stars, but this young adult fantasy I think I outgrew it as well. So it's not necessarily a bad book by any means, but it's just a book that I, again, wasn't really interested in picking up. And like Zeros, I just got rid of it because I knew that I wouldn't vibe with it now because my reading tastes have really changed. These next 2 books I'll probably read on audiobook because I've just heard that they're incredible that way. They are Circe and The Song of Achilles, both by Madeline Miller. I've read both of these. I have only just recently finished The Song of Achilles and it was in my most recent reading wrap up, so I will link that in the cards so you can go and check it out. I really enjoyed that book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's about Achilles and Patroclus. So Patroclus does this thing that I won't disclose what it is, and he gets exiled from his kingdom, and he ends up getting exiled to Prince Achilles' kingdom. So it details both of these boys when they are growing up together, and there's also a war going on at the same time, and I really like their relationship. I think it was a lot more of a stronger book than Circe was. That said, I did like Circe, but I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, or 3.5 stars out of 5. So I definitely like The Song of Achilles better, and I'm glad that I read them out of publication order. They're not necessarily related, they're both standalone books, but Circe should be read first and then The Song of Achilles. If you like more character-driven books, you'll probably like Circe more, but I liked The Song of Achilles better. I've also got another 2 books to show you, but this time they're a duology, and they are Eon and Iona by Alison Goodman. Again, Iona. I talked about that in a reading vlog, and I didn't get to it in that reading vlog, even though that reading vlog was created by me because I wanted to kind of hold myself accountable so that I wouldn't forget about things on my TBR, and I got through a big chunk of books in that reading vlog, so I'm happy about that. But I did leave The Waking Fire, which I've now finished, and I did leave Iona. I talked about them because I read the first chapter of both, and then I talked about my thoughts. So I had read a little bit of them, but I haven't properly started it. So I'm thinking that I maybe need to do a reading vlog of the books that I've got left over on my TBR because it's getting towards the end of the year, so I kind of want to do a bit of a clean up of what I've got left over. I've also got Unwind by Neil Shusterman. I ended up unhauling Unwind. I read 46 or 40 something pages of it, and I just found the writing style wasn't engaging me. That said, I know Neil Shusterman is a popular author for a reason, so I'm sure his writing is great, but I just couldn't connect with Unwind, unfortunately. I said in my vlog that I mentioned Iona in that Unwind was very choppy in its sentences, and it follows 3 different characters who are all teenagers, all from varying backgrounds, and at a particular point in their life, so when they turn 16, the parents get a choice to unwind them or not, and that's basically to donate their organs, and the child doesn't have to consent to whether this goes ahead or not. The parents get to ultimately decide. So it probably has some really great messages in there about autonomy and individuality and identity and the body, and also probably authority, but I just couldn't connect with the writing style, and I'm upset that I couldn't. So hopefully I can try his writing in the future, because Unwind is definitely not the only thing he's written. So hopefully I connect with something else that he's written, but Unwind just wasn't for me. These next 2 are also young adult fantasy, and I'm trying to finish off the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. So I've got King's Cage and Warstorm. I finished this series as well. I think I read some of it for my Owls readathon, potentially at the start of the year, but I know that I finished it, and I started it in a readathon and then didn't quite get through it, but then powered through and continued reading after the readathon finished. So I've definitely finished these books. I loved Red Queen, but the series unfortunately kind of declined for me after Red Queen. It's a fairly hyped up popular series, so I'm assuming most people kind of know what it's about, but it takes the kind of rebellion in a fantasy setting trope. So Mare Barrow is a red, and there are red bloods and silver bloods in the Red Queen world, and the reds are very much the working class, the silvers are the high class, and the silvers also have X-Men like powers. So Red Queen kind of puts this trope on its head, where Mare actually realizes that despite being a red blood, she may have a superpower of her own, and that kind of sparks a rebellion. Unfortunately, the series kind of went downhill, like I said. I love the X-Men powers part of it. I found Mare got very repetitive, and she also got a little bit petty and a bit short-sighted at certain parts. Actually, a lot of the characters in this seemed that way towards the end to me, because people in this series are literally dying and fighting a war, and these characters are frustrated at each other about particular relationships, and it just seemed fairly shallow to me, which is really unfortunate because I liked the things that were happening in this series in the first book, because I gave it like 4 stars or 5 stars. I adored it, but again, it just went downhill. So I'm sad to say that even though I finished this series, it definitely isn't a new favourite or anything. Continuing the trend of young adult fantasy on this TBR video, I have Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. I'm actually really happy with myself that I read Half a King as well, and I read it in the reading vlog that I mentioned, so I will link it below. But I also actually, despite finishing Half a King, I unhauled it, and I unhauled Half a King, and then I unhauled the rest of the trilogy because it just wasn't for me. I found the main character Yarvig to be fairly repetitive, again like Red Queen, and I understand to reiterate something to a young adult audience, it helps them remember key points of a story, but I just found Yarvig particularly not maybe whiny is what I'm looking for, but again, it just felt a little bit flat for me, which is unfortunate, especially because the first 7 pages or the first chapter of that book really hooked me and I thought it was going to be a 5-star read, and it turned out to be like a 3 out of 5 stars, unfortunately. So I'm a bit disappointed in that, but I'm going to keep reading Joe Abercrombie's adult work because I really like his adult stuff, but his young adult book really didn't do it for me. I'm not gonna lie, this next book is another young adult fantasy that I bought like 2 years ago, and I'm really hoping that I like it, and it is Truthwitch by Susan Dennard. I haven't read Truthwitch yet either, but I do have a little bit of time left this year, so I do plan on picking Truthwitch up. It's right up there on my TBR pile. It's on my TBR shelf next to my bed, so I haven't forgotten about Truthwitch. I'm looking forward to it, especially because it follows 2 females and they are best friends, and it has a fairly unique magic premise, or at least unique magic powers. There's a wind witch and there's a sight witch who can kind of predict the future, and then obviously a truth witch who can tell truth from lies, and I think those are really cool things to have as features in your characters. So I'm looking forward to Truthwitch. I've heard great things about it and I'm hoping that I end up liking it, and again, I might put it into a reading vlog because I need to kick myself up my butt and get finishing my TBR books. This last book is also supernatural fantasy, but I believe it's not YA and it's actually adult, and it is The Golem and the Genie. I tried reading some of The Golem and the Genie in my try a chapter tag, and I don't think it's going to be for me. I bought it initially, like I said, because I met Brandon Sanderson a few years ago and this is what he was reading at the time, but I don't think I'm going to connect with it. It's a very slow burn book, and I got that from just reading the first couple of pages, and it's also going to focus on mostly a romance, and it seems to be a fairly old style kind of book, and I'm not really into that at the moment. So I might pick it up in the future as an audiobook, but at the moment I'm just thinking about getting rid of it in general. I'm probably going to unhaul it and donate it just so that it's off my shelf and I kind of declutter a little bit, and then in the future I'll see if I remember it, because if I remember it I'll pick it up on audiobook, but I don't think I'm going to be really fussed about this one. I'm happy to get rid of it. And there you go, that's the end of this video. I've realized that I have a few things left over on my TBR from this priority list. There are a few things I've unhauled and I've pretty much read most of what I set out to read at the beginning, so that was my goal, to check in and see what my progress kind of was. And I'm really glad that I've embraced unhauls this year because it's helped me cut down on my TBR a lot as well. I have about 66 or 65 books on my TBR, so from a couple of years ago when it was like 205 books, that's insane. And I'm so glad that I've cut that number down so much. I'd love to get to 50 this year, but like I said in some of my other videos, my reading has slowed down a fair bit, so I don't know if that's going to be possible. I've read about 55 or 56 books out of 60 on my reading goal, so we'll see how that goes, but I plan on potentially participating in any readathons that come up at the end of the year, and I also want to do a reading vlog like I said, so I'll probably read Truthwitch and Iona in that reading vlog at least, and I know when I talked about my quarterly TBR that I had a few things left over in that as well, so I'm probably going to tackle Nightblood maybe. So a lot of young adult fantasy is going to be in that reading vlog, but that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any books that are left on your TBR and you want to tackle them before 2019 finishes, definitely let me know in the comments and we can cheer each other on. But thank you so much for watching again, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.